At 30,000 feet, F-22s surround an unmarked aircraft in forbidden airspace. Weapons are armed. The command echoes through radio silence. If no identification in 30 seconds, destroy it. But just as the lead pilot's finger tenses on the trigger, a single word cuts through the static. A call sign that vanished 3 years ago. In that instant, the kill order becomes stunned disbelief because the woman in that cockpit was officially buried. Yet now she rules the skies again, carrying intelligence that could destroy everything they believe to be true. From which city in the world are you watching this video today? If this story of buried secrets and second chances resonates with you, consider subscribing for more tales of extraordinary valor and impossible circumstances. Senior Air Traffic Controller Rachel Martinez's eyes locked onto the blinking warning on her display. 4 years at NORAD's Operations Center had trained her to separate routine breaches from genuine crises. This was something else entirely. Unknown aircraft penetrating restricted airspace over the Montana Defense Corridor. She announced, her voice slicing through the control room's ambient noise. Mach .6, no identification beacon. No final. Jake Harrison appeared at her workstation, his permanent grimace deepening the creases around his eyes. At 59, the combat veteran had witnessed enough international crises to fill multiple careers. Source, he barked. Rachel's hands moved rapidly across her interface. Flight path indicates Canadian airspace origin, sir. But the trajectory doesn't correspond to any registered military or commercial vessel. The craft's route materialized on the central screen, a precise, impossible arc slicing through their defensive network as if engineered specifically to exploit sensor blind spots. No response to our communications, Rachel added. 4 attempts across all emergency channels. Harrison analyzed the projection for exactly 7 seconds before reaching his verdict. Launch interceptors, authorization Delta 9. At Great Falls Air Force Base, flight leader Victoria Cross was already sprinting toward her F-22 when the scramble order arrived. Something in her instincts had stirred her awake 30 minutes earlier, the same intuition that had preserved her life during 2 separate hostile encounters. Gear up, she shouted to her wing as they raced across the flight line. Unidentified target violating sovereign territory. Rules of engagement, force compliance or eliminate. Lieutenant Mason Rivers matched her pace. Chinese testing our reaction protocols again. If it were Chinese, they'd make sure we knew, Victoria responded, reaching into her flight jacket to verify her talisman was secure. A photograph from her Air Force Academy graduation. 8 women, 7 faces visible, 1 intentionally shadowed. As they sealed themselves into their aircraft, Victoria glimpsed the Montana horizon. Crystalline blue with wispy clouds, unlimited visibility, perfect conditions for engagement. 30,000 feet above, steady hands fine-tuned instruments with mechanical precision. The unmarked jet, charcoal gray without any markings, moved with an elegance that contradicted its velocity. Within the cockpit, life support systems whispered as the solitary pilot reviewed coordinates on a display unlike any conventional military setup. An alert pulsed. Interceptors launched. The pilot maintained heading. Falcon lead on my right. Falcon 2, keep separation, Victoria commanded as her squadron encircled the intruder. The mysterious aircraft sustained its relentless course, navigating through the sky as though the F-22s were merely background noise. Victoria's transmission was authoritative. This is the United States Air Force. You have entered restricted airspace. Identify yourself immediately and comply with our escort to designated landing facilities. Silence greeted her words. I repeat, identify yourself or we will be compelled to engage defensively. Nothing. At NORAD, Colonel Harrison monitored the standoff on the tactical screen. Final notice, Flight Leader Cross. Then weapons free. Roger that, Victoria acknowledged, though something nagged at her about the intruder's flight characteristics. There was a cadence to its maneuvers, a distinctive quality that stirred her memory. Unknown aircraft, this is your last opportunity. Respond or we will engage in 30 seconds. In the command center, Rachel detected it as well. A subtle rhythm in the intruder's micro-adjustments. She began accessing classified flight pattern databases, her security authorization granting her entry to files most controllers never encountered. 20 seconds, Harrison announced. Victoria's weapons system achieved lock on the aircraft, her finger positioned over the firing control. Something feels wrong? She in seconds, came Harrison's voice. In the NORAD command center, Rachel's search produced a hit. A heavily censored file bearing a classification tier she'd never witnessed. Colonel, she called, strain evident in her voice. You need to see this. 5 seconds. 4, 3. The radio erupted with sudden interference, then a single word pierced the tension. Ghost. Victoria's hand locked above the weapons panel. Around her, the squadron held formation, but she sensed their bewilderment. Say again, she demanded, hardly believing her own hearing. The voice returned clearer. Call sign Ghost. Authorization Echo 7 Alpha 9. At NORAD, the command center plunged into shocked silence. Colonel Harrison stared at the screen Rachel had rotated toward him, displaying a classified file containing a single photograph. Major Sarah Blake, the most distinguished black operations pilot in Air Force records, presumed killed 3 years prior. Impossible, Harrison breathed. The mysterious aircraft suddenly rolled left, executing a sequence so intricate and flawless that it left the F-22 pilots mesmerized, a signature maneuver only one pilot had ever mastered, a technique Victoria had studied extensively but never successfully duplicated. She maneuvered her F-22 alongside the craft. Through the canopy glass, she finally glimpsed the pilot, oxygen mask concealing most features, but those eyes were unmistakable. The same eyes from the photograph pressed against her chest. The face she and her squadron mates had deliberately obscured not from shame, but from faith. Came Harrison's voice, now carrying disbelief. Clear the area and provide escort. Authorization level crimson. Asir, Lieutenant Rivers questioned, confusion obvious. Victoria responded instead, unable to mask the wonder in her voice. Stand down, Lieutenant. That's not hostile. She switched to a secured frequency, one unused for 3 years. Welcome back. Major, the classified hangar at Great Falls had been evacuated of all unauthorized personnel. Armed sentries established a security perimeter as the mysterious aircraft rolled to a halt, its engine cycling down with an unfamiliar resonance. Military leadership had converged with remarkable speed. Colonel Harrison, base commanders, and most significantly General Patricia Stone, whose mere presence indicated the situation's magnitude. At 62, the general had weathered sufficient political battles and combat zones to intimidate subordinate officers with a glance. The cockpit opened with a pneumatic release. A figure emerged deliberately, removing a helmet to reveal short, cropped hair and a face bearing a scar absent 3 years before. Major Sarah Blake descended the access ladder with a titanium briefcase secured to her wrist, her movements revealing the cost of whatever mission had kept her absent. Silence filled the hangar as she approached the assembled officials. General Stone stepped forward. 3 years without contact, Major, the general stated, her expression unreadable. You were listed as killed in action. I had to be. Sarah replied, her voice roughened by disuse or perhaps something darker. They were monitoring everything. She raised the secured case. This contains proof of treachery within our own intelligence apparatus. 3 years ago, I didn't crash in the Pacific Rim. I went underground to uncover the truth. Using her free hand, she retrieved a key and opened the case, revealing a specialized storage device. High-ranking officials trafficking classified mission data and security codes. They attempted to eliminate me when I discovered their network. I've spent 3 years collecting evidence and identifying all participants. General Stone accepted the device, examining it briefly before meeting Sarah's stare. For a moment, the hangar remained motionless, tension electric as everyone awaited the general's reaction. Without warning, General Stone raised her right hand in formal salute. Major Blake. The gesture cascaded through the hangar. Sequentially, every officer present, including those who had questioned her, who had accepted the official narrative of her mission failure and death, came to attention and saluted. Colonel Harrison was among the final, his salute accompanied by a respectful nod and perhaps an unspoken apology. Victoria approached after the ceremonies concluded. She withdrew the photograph from her flight suit and extended it. We never wrote you off, she said simply, showing Sarah the image where her face had been deliberately shadowed. We knew you'd return. Sarah touched the photograph, rare emotion crossing her features. You maintained belief. You showed us that honor transcends documentation, Victoria replied. Even casualty reports. In a secured briefing chamber within Great Falls Air Force Base, Major Sarah Blake stood before projected satellite intelligence. Her bearing remained rigid despite the exhaustion visible in her expression. The secured case had been removed, its contents now protected within military intelligence networks under maximum security protocols. Operation Blackwater began as standard reconnaissance. Sarah explained to the select group of senior officials. My unit was monitoring suspicious cargo movements in the Pacific Theater when we intercepted coded transmissions that violated every protocol. She indicated a series of coordinates appearing on screen. These classified flight corridors were being broadcast to unauthorized recipients. When I reported the compromise to command, I was ordered to cease investigation. Colonel Harrison shifted in his chair. Who issued that directive? General Marcus Webb. Sarah responded immediately. The same officer who declared me missing in action when my aircraft vanished from tracking. Murmurs circulated among the assembled officers. General Webb had retired with distinction 14 months prior, his service record unblemished. I needed everyone to believe I was dead, Sarah continued. It was the sole method to operate freely, to trace the money without alerting those involved. 3 years of existing in shadows, assuming new identities, gathering proof. General Stone studied the information flowing across her device. This implicates 15 senior officials across 4 service branches and 3 intelligence divisions. The security breach is catastrophic, and the evidence is absolute, Sarah added. Financial records, intercepted conversations, digital signatures, everything required for discrete apprehensions and classified trials. The room quieted as the implications settled. A conspiracy of this scope would destabilize military command structures if exposed publicly. How did you survive? Victoria asked the question burning within her since recognizing those eyes behind the aircraft glass. Your jet was confirmed destroyed. A shadow of a smile crossed Sarah's face. That prototype you just escorted, I've been developing it under a compartmentalized program. When I realized I was targeted, I faked my destruction and disappeared. Alone, Harrison pressed. I had one ally, Sarah admitted, Captain Lisa Chen, Intelligence Division. She maintained a secure communication channel for information transfers. Without her, I wouldn't have survived the first week. General Stone nodded. Captain Chen was discovered deceased in her residence 6 months ago. Ruled suicide. Sarah's expression hardened. Nothing ruled about it. They found her connection to me and eliminated her. That's when I knew I had to accelerate my timeline and surface. The briefing extended for hours, each disclosure more devastating than the previous. A corruption network penetrating the highest levels of military leadership, selling not just flight plans, but weapons schematics, defense vulnerabilities, and deployment intelligence to international buyers. When the session finally ended, Sarah found herself alone with Colonel Harrison in the empty conference room. Years of unresolved tension hung between them. "You were correct," Harrison said finally, shattering the silence. 3 years ago, when you approached me with concerns about anomalies in the transmission logs, I dismissed your warnings. You followed procedure. Sarah replied neutrally. "Procedure that nearly killed you." Harrison rubbed his face, suddenly appearing every one of his 59 years. "I should have listened. Would it have mattered?" Sarah asked. They had contingencies for every scenario. Before Harrison could respond, Victoria appeared in the doorway. "Major, your quarters are prepared. Medical staff is standing by for evaluation." Sarah nodded, collecting her materials. "Well, resume tomorrow, Colonel." As she followed Victoria through the base corridors, Sarah absorbed the familiar environment that now felt oddly alien. 3 years in exile had transformed her in ways she was beginning to comprehend. "Your former team has been informed of your return," Victoria said as they walked. Classified briefing, naturally, restricted to those with proper clearance. "How many remained?" "5 of us," Victoria replied. "Myself, Rivers, Thompson, Martinez, and Davis. The others were transferred after you were declared dead." They reached an unmarked door at the corridor's end. Victoria entered a code, and the door opened to reveal basic quarters with standard furnishings. "It's not luxurious," Victoria said apologetically. "It's more than I've had in 3 years." Sarah replied, entering the space. She surveyed the room, instinctively assessing escape routes and defensive positions, habits that had preserved her life while operating in hostile territory. Victoria hesitated at the entrance. "May I ask something, Major?" Sarah nodded. "When you transmitted your call sign today, why did you wait until the final moment?" 5 more seconds and I would have fired." Sarah seated herself on the narrow bed. "I needed to determine if the command structure had been purged during my absence. If my call sign and authorization weren't instantly recognized and honored, it would have indicated the corruption extended beyond my discoveries. You gambled your life on a test. I've been gambling my life daily for 3 years, flight leader. Today was no different." Victoria processed this, then straightened. "Medical team is ready when you are. After that, there's someone else requesting to see you." Interest flickered in Sarah's eyes. "Ooh, Admiral Carter. He flew in from the Pentagon as soon as he learned of your return." Something unreadable crossed Sarah's expression. "David is here. Arrived 30 minutes ago. He's with General Stone now, examining your evidence." After a brief but comprehensive medical evaluation that documented what Sarah's body had endured during her self-imposed exile, multiple healed fractures, and a collection of scars narrating she wasn't prepared to share, she was cleared for the meeting that would shape the operation's next phase. The conference room was sealed, electronic countermeasures ensuring no surveillance, internal or external, could penetrate its defenses. Admiral David Carter rose when Sarah entered, his typically stoic face displaying rare emotion. "Major Blake," he said formally, though his voice contained warmth that contradicted the professional address. "Admiral," Sarah acknowledged with a nod. They shared history, complex and layered, predating her disappearance. Mentor and student, later colleagues, and something deeper that had never been fully explored before her mission went catastrophic. General Stone observed their interaction with interest before refocusing on the immediate concern. "We've analyzed your evidence, Major. Arrest procedures are being executed for all individuals identified in your files." "And General Webb?" Sarah asked. "Already in custody," Admiral Carter confirmed. "Apprehended at his lake house 4 hours ago. He's being held at a secure facility under counterintelligence protocols." Sarah absorbed this, her expression carefully controlled despite the burden lifting from her shoulders. 3 years of isolation and vigilance, constantly evading those who wanted her permanently silenced, had culminated in this moment. "There's still the question of foreign connections," she said, focusing on the mission rather than personal vindication. "The buyers were diverse, but patterns indicate coordinated effort by multiple hostile intelligence services." Admiral Carter nodded. "That's phase 2 of the operation and why I'm here." He glanced at General Stone, who gave slight approval. "We want you to lead the counterintelligence effort, Major. You've already established the groundwork. You understand the players better than anyone." Sarah hadn't anticipated this. She'd expected debriefing, possibly reassignment, or even medical retirement given the sensitivity of her discoveries. Not advancement. "With respect, Admiral, I've been operating outside official channels for 3 years. My methods wouldn't be considered standard." "Standard methods didn't expose this conspiracy," General Stone observed. "Standard methods declared you dead and allowed traitors to continue selling our secrets." A knock interrupted them. After security verification, Victoria entered with a classified file bearing maximum security markings. "Preliminary analysis of the aircraft, sir," she reported, delivering the file to Admiral Carter. "Engineering team's assessment." Carter reviewed the documents, his eyebrows rising slightly. "You've been productive, Major, this technology surpasses our current deployment capabilities by at least a decade. Necessity drives innovation, Sarah replied simply. When you can't trust established channels, you develop new ones. The Admiral closed the file. Additional reason for you to command this operation. You've already proven exceptional adaptability under impossible conditions. Sarah looked between the Admiral and General, then to Victoria, who remained at attention nearby. After 3 years of solitary operation, the prospect of leading a team again, of working within the system she'd fought to protect despite its flaws, felt both strange and familiar. When do we begin? 8 months passed in a meticulously coordinated operation that systematically eliminated the network Sarah had exposed. Each arrest was executed with surgical precision, suspects detained simultaneously to prevent warning signals reaching their conspirators. Public announcements cited routine reassignments or health retirements, truth concealed behind classification levels few could access. In a secure facility beneath the Pentagon, Sarah stood before a holographic display mapping the connections her team had traced between domestic traders and their international buyers. Red lines indicated information flow. Blue lines tracked financial transfers, creating an elaborate web spanning continents. The final component, she said, highlighting a node pulsing at the network's edge. Operative designated Raven, the facilitator who connected our people with foreign intelligence. Admiral Carter studied the display, hands clasped behind his back. Do we have positive identification? Facial recognition from surveillance in Vienna. Biometric confirmation from the Prague meeting. Sarah enlarged an image revealing a distinguished man in his 60s, silver-haired and impeccably dressed. Former CIA, retired 7 years ago, Michael Ross. Victoria, now serving as Sarah's deputy commander, added, he's scheduled to attend a private defense conference in Berlin next week. Our optimal opportunity for clean extraction. The Admiral nodded. Plan the operation. Full resources, your discretion on team selection. Sir, Sarah acknowledged, already mentally selecting the operative she would need. Over recent months, she had assembled a team of specialists she personally vetted, individuals whose loyalty was to nation rather than personal advancement. It was a lesson learned during her years in exile. Trust was earned, not granted by rank or position. After the Admiral departed, Victoria remained, reviewing operational parameters on her tablet. Major, there's something else you should see. She transferred a file to the main display. General Webb's interrogation transcripts. Sarah scanned the document, her expression darkening. He's still denying direct involvement in the attempt on my life. But he admits to issuing the stand-down order when you reported the security breach, Victoria pointed out. Claims he was following orders from above. Convenient, Sarah murmured, especially since his above died in a car accident 18 months ago and can't confirm or deny. Victoria hesitated before asking the question that had lingered since Sarah's return. Do you ever regret it, going dark instead of trying to fight within the system? Sarah considered the question, her gaze drifting to the wall of names they'd compiled. Officials across multiple agencies who had betrayed their oaths for profit. The system was compromised. Fighting within it would have meant fighting with constraints against opponents who controlled the rules. She turned to face her former student. Sometimes the only way to save something is to step outside it and see it clearly from distance. The preparation for the Berlin operation consumed the following week. Sarah personally reviewed every detail, from extraction routes to contingency plans for multiple scenarios. The target was high value not just for intelligence he could provide about remaining network elements, but as final proof needed for the classified tribunals that would deliver justice without compromising national security. The night before departure, Sarah found herself in the empty briefing room, reviewing the operation timeline once more. The sound of the door opening drew her attention. Admiral Carter entered carrying 2 cups of coffee. Thought you might need this, he said, placing one before her. You've been at it for 20 hours straight. Old habits. Sarah replied, accepting the coffee gratefully. In the field, Theranos kept me alive. The Admiral took the seat across from her. In the months since her return, their interactions had remained strictly professional, the weight of their shared past carefully set aside for the mission. But tonight, with the operation hours from execution, something in the atmosphere between them shifted. The tribunal dates have been scheduled, Carter said after a moment. Once Ross is secured, we can proceed with the final phase. Sarah nodded. And then we rebuild, he replied. New protocols, restructured command chains, enhanced internal monitoring. Our systems can be circumvented, Sarah observed. Be the same people responsible for maintaining them. Which is why the human element matters most, Carter countered. People like you who remember what they're fighting for beyond career advancement or political leverage. A rare smile touched Sarah's lips. That sounds suspiciously like the speech you gave at Academy graduation 12 years ago. I meant it then, Carter said, holding her gaze. I mean it now. Integrity can't be systematized. The moment stretched between them, heavy with unspoken words. Finally, Sarah returned her attention to the mission briefing. Wheels up at 0400. You'll have secure updates every 8 hours. The Admiral recognized the shift back to professional territory and respected it. Good hunting, Major. The Berlin operation proceeded with the precision that had become Sarah's signature. Michael Ross was extracted from his hotel suite without incident. The defense conference continuing unaware that one of its distinguished attendees had been replaced by an operative with similar build and appearance, ensuring his absence wouldn't be noticed for at least 36 hours. In a secure facility outside Munich, Ross sat across from Sarah in an interrogation room designed for comfort rather than intimidation. His initial shock at seeing her had confirmed what she'd long suspected: he had been directly involved in the attempt on her life. "You should be dead," he said, his cultured voice betraying only mild surprise rather than the fear she might have expected. "Many people should be things they're not," Sarah replied evenly. "Loyal, for instance." Ross smiled thinly. "Loyalty is subjective, Major. I served my country for 28 years before retirement. What I did afterward was simply business. Selling flight paths that resulted in pilot deaths isn't business," Sarah countered. "It's treason." "Such absolute thinking." Ross sighed. "The world operates in shades of gray. Always has." Sarah leaned forward. "I didn't bring you here for philosophical discussions. I want the remaining network contacts, the ones you kept off digital channels, names, communication methods, dead drops. And why would I provide those? Because contrary to your assumptions, I'm offering you a choice," Sarah said. "Cooperate and face a closed tribunal with possibility of reduced sentencing. Refuse and you'll be publicly tried for treason with the complete evidence we've assembled." Ross's confident demeanor wavered slightly. "You're bluffing. They'd never allow a public trial. Too many secrets would be exposed." "Test me," Sarah suggested calmly. "See what happens when you underestimate someone you already failed to kill once." The interrogation continued for hours, a careful balance of pressure and patience. By the time Sarah emerged, she had what she needed, the final pieces that would complete the puzzle she'd spent 3 years assembling. The return flight to Washington carried not just a high-value prisoner, but the culmination of an operation that had consumed Sarah's existence. As the military transport cruised at altitude, she found a moment of quiet reflection in the aircraft's rear section. Victoria joined her. "Take mission accomplished, Major." "This face," Sarah corrected. "There's still the tribunals, the sentencing, the restructuring." "But you did it," Victoria insisted. "You came back from the dead and brought down an entire network that thought they were untouchable." Sarah gazed out the small window at the clouds below. Not alone. 2 months later, in a ceremony attended only by those with maximum security clearances, Major Sarah Blake received a medal that didn't officially exist. The conspiracy she had uncovered had been neutralized, the perpetrator sentenced in classified proceedings that would never reach public records. As she stood to address the small gathering, not politicians or press, but the pilots and operators who had continued to believe in her, Sarah looked more like herself again, though the experiences of the past 3 years had left permanent marks, both visible and invisible. 3 years ago, I made a decision that separated me from everything I knew," she began. "I didn't do it for recognition. I did it because sometimes the hardest path is the only correct one." She looked at the faces before her, the people who had carried on in her absence, who had protected her memory when others would have tarnished it. "Integrity isn't measured by what you do when everyone's watching," she continued, unpinning the medal from her uniform. "It's what you do when no one is." With deliberate movements, she crossed to where Victoria stood and pinned the medal onto her former student's uniform. "The next generation needs to understand that." As the ceremony concluded, the small group moved outside to the airfield. Above them, fighter jets streaked past in perfect formation with one deliberate gap. The missing pilot formation, once performed in Sarah's memory, now honored those who had fallen uncovering the truth she had brought home. Sarah and Victoria stood side by side, watching the aircraft disappear into the distance. "What now, Major?" Victoria asked. Sarah's gaze remained fixed on the horizon. "Now we keep flying. Someone always needs to guard the boundaries." Above them, the sky stretched endlessly blue, the same sky that had witnessed her return, the same sky that would watch over whatever came next.